right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us bright and early for this breakfast session. I really appreciate you being here. My name is Eric Weeden. If we haven't met before, I'm head of sales at TrueLark, now part of the Weed family. For the past 6 years, I've been focused on helping dental practices, DSOs, DPOs, adopt AI for improved efficiency. It's been a fun, wild ride, you can imagine. In doing that, not only efficiency, but elevate the patient experience, right? Because it's not just about EBITDA and staff experience, it's about the patient as well. At TrueLark, where I've been at for the last 6+ years, we're particularly passionate about using AI to automate scheduling. Thus, we thought it would be a great topic today. And with that said, as you know, scheduling is often harder than it looks. So while on surface topic scheduling, oh gee whiz, it's pretty easy, but once you get into it, not so easy. In fact, I like to compare it to baseball. I don't know, it's kind of baseball season. Anybody watching baseball? I watch it when I'm on the road occasionally. That's the only time I ever have time to do things like that. It's pretty easy, right? Batter gets up, a pitcher throws the ball, and you're supposed to swing, hit the ball, and get on base, score runs, and win, right? And in the pro leagues, make a lot of money. However, a friend of mine, with much deeper baseball knowledge, once pointed out, when you start to factor in pitch type, speed, spin, location, and velocity, there are actually hundreds of pitch combinations a batter might face, some coming at you at 100 miles per hour. Suddenly, it's not so simple. Kind of sound like scheduling sometimes? Yeah, okay. So dental scheduling definitely is kind of the same way, right? On paper, it sounds straightforward, but in practice, it's filled with complexities, nuance, and pressure. And yet, it's absolutely critical to running a successful practice. Because scheduling is so critical, we wanted to bring you an engaging conversation, and that's exactly what I want today. A lot of times I'm interactive. I like to get some audience participation, and we have an excellent panel here today. So we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to focus on how AI is tackling it. But also, we brought together a panel, and we're going to get their thoughts and insights of how these industry experts are, working day in and day out, helping dental practices navigate these challenges. Sound good? Yeah. All right. Good. Okay. Right side, left side. Come on. All right. So to bring this to life, I'm excited to introduce the panel of leaders who are in front of you right now, working day in and day out. Today we have, to my left, Amy Manzo. Amy is a Senior Director of Operations at MB2 Dental. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about MB2. Amy works closely with practices every day, helping one of the largest dental partnership organizations optimize operations and deliver better care, and I can tell you she is awesome. To her left is Chris Ternus. Chris is a Strategic Account Manager at Planet DDS. Chris brings decades, and I'm not kidding, decades of experience. And not you look at him and he's like, yeah, how can that guy have decades of experience? But he comes with decades of experience helping practices become more productive through smart technology and streamlined workflows. I think everybody here that knows Chris knows him for like way back in the day, and he brings a wealth of knowledge. So thank you, Chris, for being here. And then across the screen, in the other blue jacket, we have David McNeil. David McNeil is Chief Revenue Officer at Weave. David represents a company deeply committed to improving both the practice and patient experience through integrated communication tools. Thank you for being here, David. And lastly, but not least, certainly, is Tapan Patel. Tapan is head of product at TrueLark. Tapan is a passionate expert in AI automation, continuously innovating how AI can take on more use cases and drive meaningful impact in dentistry. I'm sure as we go through this session, his brain will be working a million miles an hour, and he'll be thinking about the next great innovative idea.
It's early.
It's early, but don't count him out. Tapan is always, one to surprise. Before we get into the discussion, I'd like to quickly set the stage with a few slides. We'll walk through what makes scheduling so complex in dental organizations. the real cost of getting it wrong and the right solutions and what they look like, to get it right. And especially, when you combine AI with that, then we'll open it up to our panel. We'll have, their insights. We'll have some questions, and then we'll get some Q&A from the audience. Good? All right, let's roll. Let's get started. Okay, so let's see. There's our panel. Sorry, on the slide there. So getting scheduling right is absolutely critical. When it works, you see it in your efficiency, patient satisfaction, and profitability. For many practices, especially within DSOs, it's far from easy. In fact, it often feels chaotic. Why? From our work at TrueLark with hundreds of practices, we've seen 4 core issues consistently standing in the way. And on the surface, you might be looking at these and being like, okay, yeah, of course, but let's dive in a little bit deeper into these. Number 1, lack of standardization. And as I go through these, kind of raise your hand if that really resonates with you, and maybe we'll get a poll of which is the biggest blocker out there. But lack of standardization, what we've seen is that every practice, process inconsistencies, my first one. Process inconsistencies, okay. So process inconsistencies. On this, what we're talking about, workflows vary not just across practices, but even within a single practice. Does that resonate with anybody? See some heads nodding out there. So we're talking about recall reminders, scheduling, PMS data. These often don't align. The result is what? Any results? Double bookings, missed appointments, frustration. So practice inconsistency is a big one. Let's get into lack of standardization. Every practice has its own version of best practices. Yes? Yes, okay, all right, yeah, okay. Every practice has its own version of best practices, but without a standardized approach across locations, it's nearly impossible to implement scalable systems or automation. I think, Amy, you're gonna have a bit to say about that one as we get into the panel, right?
Yes.
Okay, so disconnected data sources. Anybody in the audience in the IT side of the house? Got it, yeah, see some hands here. Okay, so your tools often don't talk to each other. Yeah, all the time, some of the time, okay. Your phone systems, so we're talking PMS, CRM, communication tools, operate in silos, creating blind spots and manual handoffs to slow everything down. A big one that we talk about all the time. And then manual tech, I like to call it swivel chair workflows. I'd like to say that I coined this term many, many years ago. I don't think I did, but if you use it, you can send $10 to Eric Weeden via Venmo or something. So manual technology and swivel chair workflows. So front office teams are juggling multiple tabs, screens, and systems. I hear this all the time. In fact, I had a DSO that gave me a kind of almost like if you guys remember what a Visio diagram looks like, of all the different platforms. I mean, it was crazy, right? And so, these tools require too much human intervention to work well, leading to errors and lost time. So all that swivel chair work doesn't just slow things down, it creates a real consequence across your operations. So let's take a closer look at the chaos. And let's have a vote. Anybody process inconsistencies? Who has those? Yeah, okay. Lack of standardization? Yeah, okay, a lot of hands there. Disconnected data sources. Yeah, heads nodding, okay. Manual tech. Yeah, okay, resonating, okay, good. All right, so current state, costly chaos. So this slide illustrates what we call the chaos of scheduling. When the underlying systems are disconnected, inconsistent, or overly manual, sorry, I got a fly in my face here. Here's what shows up. You get booking errors in the wrong slots. Anybody ever have that happen? Leading to delays, overbooking or underutilization, you get double booking, so a direct hit to patient experience and the team's efficiency, inconsistent provider schedules, especially tough to manage across locations and specialities, disparate rules, standards, even with every office has its own logic for how things works, and then duplicate patient profiles leading to confusion, follow-ups, and potential HIPAA violations. Not good. And of course, no-shows. I think our art department or marketing department decided to put no-shows in red, so apparently that is one that that everybody doubly hates. And no-shows, it throws off the day, it impacts production, it hurts revenue. In fact, I hear pretty often a no-show rate quite, like 25 to 35% isn't unusual. Anybody get a higher one than that? You care to?
Well, the large practices.
Okay. Tough time. Okay. So we'll talk about no-shows a little bit today, but all the technical chaos leads to one thing, money lost. So it's lost productivity, it's lost patient trust, and ultimately lost revenue. Okay, but when it's done right, scheduling improves everything. So you unlock operational efficiency. So you're reducing the burden on your team, which, side benefit of that is going to be less turnover, right? So happy team, happy life. You're going to have longer tenure. It's tough to hire. We know that churn is a big problem in the industry. And also it frees them up to focus on what matters most. If you could give hours a week back to your team, what would you have them do? Think about that for a minute. Probably some gears turning out there. Also, you deliver a better patient experience, right? So fewer no-shows, smoother interactions, and more timely care. And ultimately, you're driving profitability, filling more chairs, retaining more patients, and creating measurable value to both your partners and your investors. That's the upside of what we're all chasing. But first, we have to solve the mess that's standing in our way. Come on in, no points deducted. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what the right solution looks like. What do you need to address this chaos? We have 4 things up here: configurable, comprehensive, automated, and extensible. And again, kind of like the 4 things that we looked at in the beginning on surface, they might kind of seem like no-brainers, but let's dig into it a little bit deeper and discuss what these really mean. So configurable, every DSO, and frankly, every practice within a DSO has its own set of scheduling rules, workflows, and logic, right? In fact, that's one of the barriers to getting buy-in from just a mental perspective of change, because they're like, hey, we're a snowflake, we're different. There's no way on earth that you could accommodate what we do, and that's just the nature of the beast. But what we've learned is you don't need standardization to succeed. That's just a fact. Okay, that's the state of the world. But what you do need is a system that can accommodate variation. And so what does that mean? It means the right platform should be able to take your best practices, whatever they are, and turn them into scalable automation. That means handling different provider types, appointment rules, timing preferences, operatory setups, even phantom columns, a favorite of Amy's, and probably Chris's too. So if your system can adapt to those details, it's going to break. Okay. Comprehensive. Today's patient journey doesn't follow a single path, does it? They might text, call, submit a form, knock on the door, chat on your website, all to book the same appointment. So a comprehensive solution must work across all those modalities and handle a wide range of use cases, from missed calls and recalls to follow-ups and web chats, and it should integrate deeply with the systems you already use. So that's your PMS, your phone systems, CRMs, so that it fits seamlessly into your workflows. Otherwise, you're only going to create what? More work, more manual work. Automated. So automated, it's kind of a loaded word, right? Sounds, okay, yeah, automation. But this is about, what it's about really at the end of the day is task completion. And that's something that we've really focused on at TrueLark. It's not just about task awareness. There's a huge difference between task awareness and task completion. So if the system can't actually finish the job, book the appointment, reschedule correctly, prevent duplicate profiles, it just pushes that burden to your staff. True automation means less swivel chair work and more actual results. It's what separates a chatbot from a true AI solution. How many of you have put in an automated system that basically has become a glorified notification system? Any out there? Maybe a few. Okay. All right. Lastly, extensible. This is something that is near and dear to the founder of our company at TrueLark. This is often most overlooked. The solution you implement today shouldn't just solve today's problems, it should also grow with you. But how does it do that? What does that mean? As your needs expand, reminders, outbound campaigns, additional locations, new specialties, you need a brand new system every time. You shouldn't need a brand new system every time, right? If it is truly extensible, it's going to let you build once and scale fast, leveraging existing configurations to roll out new use cases without starting from scratch. That's what keeps your tech stack clean and your operations efficient. Thoughts, comments, did that resonate? Did that hit home? Okay, good. All right, so we've covered what's broken and we've outlined what a great solution should look like. Now I want to briefly share how we at TrueLark have approached this challenge and why we built a centralized AI control center specifically for the dental practices, DSOs, and DPOs out there. Just real quick, at the heart of it is Midgo AI, a proprietary AI engine that blends. At the core of it, well, here, let me define Midgo, because it's an engine purpose-built for healthcare dental workflows. So Midgo stands for Multimodal Integrated Data-Driven Generative and Optimized AI. I'll give a Starbucks card of some value to somebody that can come up to me afterwards and spout that off. But really, at the end of the day, what it means is that it's not just smart, it's adaptable, it's interconnected, it's purpose-built to operate across multiple modalities like SMS, web, and voice, and respond to real-world triggers like missed calls, texts, and online forms. It integrates with the tools you already use, so your PMS, your phone systems, CRMs, and provides centralized analytics so you can measure performance across all your locations. The result, one control center that supports all of your use cases, scales with your needs, and reduces the burden on your staff, not adds to it. And if you have more interest in that, come talk to us, after this event, or come by our booth. But so that's what we're thinking about solving the scheduling challenge. Now, let's open up to our panel. They bring real-world perspective from DSOs, product platform, and partnerships. So let's hear what they're seeing play out in their organizations. So without further ado, I'm going to open up some questions for the panel. And I'm going to start off with one for all of them and kind of get their input on it. So, I talked about configurable. At TrueLark, we like to say that we have 1,000 configurations in a box, but that can mean different things to different people. I gave everybody kind of our take and our definition on it. But in your experience, what does configurability really look like in the context of scheduling, and why does it matter? And I'm going to throw it over to Chris first to tackle that one. So Chris, tell us from your perspective, what does configurable mean, and what's the big deal about it?
Well, when it comes to configurability, you want it to match operationally from the top down what leadership wants. And oftentimes what I find in dental practices is the individual practices or even the team leaders or the team members are configuring things to match their individual needs and their individual perspectives. So configurability to customize to what the overarching operations team needs is really what I look at for configurability and making that streamlined across the organization.
Great, thanks Chris.
Of course.
Tapan, you got a take on it?
Is it okay? There we go. So I think I broadly speaking agree with what Chris is sharing about configurability, but I think one of the realities is that while you may have a top-down goal for where you'd like to get, and I think that's where we should always strive to get, the reality on the ground is ultimately that practices do operate differently today. And so any sort of system that you're building shouldn't be limited by what the ideal solution looks like, but is able to account for how the practice is running today so that you can deliver value today. And so configurability to me means, enable which providers you want to be bookable, enable the right appointment types you want any sort of solution to be able to schedule for, enable and be able to map to those accurately when you're engaging with patients. It means being able to, if the practice only wants to book appointments at the top of the hour, make sure you book at the top of the hour and not, at the middle of the hour, 15 minutes, that sort of thing. And so, that to me is what configurability means. Make it so that every one of your practices at your DSO is able to leverage solutions that are available today and able to adapt to those practices today. And then perhaps over time, as you get buy-in, you're able to navigate through the process of getting to a more standardized approach that allows you to get to that ideal state of operation.
Yes, you're correct.
Sorry.
I'm just looking at endpoints.
No, and it reminds me of the early days of TrueLark in the dental space when we would work with Chris. He used to be at a different company, and he would send us, we would onboard practices, and he would send us literally spreadsheets that captured, which was the best way in which scheduling was being defined. And so one of the challenges, just to kind of skip to a different point that we were trying to make earlier, is that one of the challenges is that what makes it difficult to schedule well within practice today is the lack of proper documentation. And even if it is proper, it may not be documented in a very scalable way. And so what's been great to see that, since then, there have been, amazing improvements on tooling, PMSs that help you kind of codify some of these things a lot better to make it scalable in the long run.
Amy, do you got a follow-up on that?
Oh my goodness. I think you guys covered all of it. The only thing I will add to that is, working with a DPO where we give the practice full autonomy, it is even more challenging than coming from just one practice or like a DSO that everybody has the same system or same PMS or same phone system. And so what that looks like from my view is different in every single practice that I work with. And so having to adjust that for that particular location for success is important. So they really covered everything.
Well, I'm going to see if David can add just a little bit to it. Maybe David, in the contrast between rigid systems and ones that can adapt to variations across practices, is there a take that you have on that?
I don't think much beyond what was already said. Ultimately, in each individual practice is so nuanced on how people think about their day and their life, and they're trying to accommodate the needs of both the practice and the outcomes they're trying to get, but also the practitioners. And they're prickly, right? And you get it wrong, and you're going to hear it. And the lifeblood of the office staff is to make sure they're not only serving for the patient, but serving for that practitioner. And so it's in their head. Like, they know the dynamics of what really matters to that particular doctor, how they like their schedule to work, the sequencing of that schedule, the types of procedures they want. And so you need to understand and be able to codify that. But trying to get that done at the top level is really hard. And so you really need to get into the guts of the practice itself and understand those nuances and be able to apply for that. And then the great thing is the data starts to give you the insights, right? When you can start to aggregate the data, you can actually start to see where the nuances are. And you talk to these practices and you can start to see you're not optimizing your schedule for this, this, and this. And if you had only done, opened up hours between this hour and that hour, your profitability and your revenue would go to X to Y. And so you can actually start to show them a baseline for the difference between where you are today and where you can go. But first you've got to ingest the data and actually be able to apply it. And you're not going to ingest the data unless you start to provide value, right? Because nobody wants to actually just give you the written data. So if you can go in there and you can actually start to provide them immediate value through the scheduling process to give the office the efficiencies they're looking for, then you're providing them value. And in that process, you're also extracting the data you need to actually do it right and differently over time. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you. All right, moving on. Amy, I have one for you. All right, so you have a network of practices. What are some of the biggest challenges you see around scheduling technical, emotional, otherwise. In what roles does technology play in addressing those challenges, and what things have you uncovered as kind of some secret sauce to overcoming those challenges as well?
Okay. Well, going back to what David said, the practitioner, right? So you've got all these different practices that can do it however they want. And so figuring out a way to schedule that is profitable for each practice, but also effective and efficient. And then, like you said, you've got the emotions of the practice or the practice manager who doesn't want change. So you're battling something, right? Either the doctor or the manager or the scheduling coordinator or whoever it is that doesn't want those kinds of changes in your practices. So overcoming that is not an easy obstacle, but once you do, you can actually create an effective schedule that makes your practice profitable. I do have a phantom column. I don't know if you want me to chat about that yet, but.
Well, okay, so tell us more, but I want to go back to something that you said about
Okay.
Getting buy-in, right?
Yeah.
So super critical. You know, oftentimes when I work on projects, people ask me, hey, Eric, what's the difference between a good rollout and a bad rollout, right? And it's not the technology, right? It seldom is. It's usually the buy-in and its leadership cascading down, the why and the value of it. It's getting buy-in from, you know, the people on boots on the ground, they're at the practices, you know, all the way through the organization. What do you do to, because you do a great job of getting people aligned around, you know, a goal and an effort and driving that. What
Sure.
do you do to do that?
It's different. I mean, one of the focuses is how I communicate with one practitioner may be different with another based on their personality. So let's just start there. That's like the first part. But then once you go in, you've got to figure out what the value is for them, and you've got to ask them those questions. So going back to your analogy with baseball, you know, a lot of times when I sit down and I get pushback, I have a conversation with the practitioner and say, look, you know, why do your patients call here? What kind of appointments do they want? So getting that, asking those questions, because they're in the technical weeds of practice, they're not actually thinking broad, right? And I have this funny analogy, or this practice, you know, they want to schedule for bite wings and exam. No patient calls your practice and says, I need bite wings, right? Does anybody do that? Does anybody get this one? I'm like, why would we even have that conversation or try to schedule down those lines? So I think when you're getting the buy-in, it's based on that personality and showing them some examples and results you have. I have obstacles. Well, I'm in a retirement community and my patients don't know tech. Really? Well, let me show you a practice that I work with that's 2 miles down the road in that retirement community that has a 98% conversion rate of scheduling through AI. So now tell me that that's an excuse. And so you've got to kind of walk through those excuses, and you're going to get, when you come to change, there's every excuse in the book, whether it's, again, is from the practice manager or from the doctor. And so you've got to really figure out a solution and have an answer to walk them through that for the buy-in and have some results to show them.
Excellent.
Answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. What do you guys think? How about the phantom column? Let's hear about
Phantom
that.
column. Okay, so look, dentistry, every practice, most every practice is going to want new patients, right? And if they don't have new patients, you all know what happens, right? That they like die a slow death. And so, you know, I need new patients. The doctor says, I need new patients. I go, great, when can you get me in? Oh, we have 3.5 weeks out. So you want new patients, but you can't get them in for 3.5 weeks. So the dental office across the corner can. So you have to kind of change that mindset, and that goes back to block scheduling, formatted scheduling, whatever word you know, there's all these delays, or you know how they talk about that. But I use the phantom call-in. No-shows, cancellations is a pet peeve of mine. And so if I have a practice that has a 20% no-show rate, they have a phantom column that books 20% over. And I typically have a phantom column on both the provider, the doctor, and both the hygiene column. Hygienists, if they are not with a patient, we are paying buku dollars to these hygienists to sit around and twiddle their thumbs. Every hygienist could add one more appointment into their morning or their afternoon if they need to. There's a team, there's people there to help them, right? There's dental assistants, it's called teamwork. And so getting that buy-in is important, but that phantom column allows that at the end of the day, even if you lost 20%, you may have added 30% more in. Does that, right? That's what we need. We need a profitable, productive day. So the phantom column it's literally a column in your PMS. It is what I call a phantom column. That is where TrueLark patients book. And Monday or Tuesday after a holiday, can everybody vouch that Tuesday's a holiday after Labor Day, and everybody comes in and everybody falls off the schedule. They didn't get back in town, they partied too long over the weekend, they're sick, whatever happens. That Tuesday after a Monday holiday is the worst no-show day in a practice, no doubt. So think about having a phantom column that allows you to maybe open up and book 50% or 60% more. And you know how many patients that had too much to drink, slipped and broke a tooth, right? And so my point is they're going in, they have a toothache and they're making their own appointments. And so you come in Tuesday and you really aren't down 50% in your day. You actually maybe are up 10% than what you were when you left on Friday. So that's my phantom column.
Phantom column most applicable to the day after the Super Bowl or Labor Day?
Both, actually.
I actually thought
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say after Dykema, but
Yeah, there you go.
For a small percentage.
All right, well then that means a question for David, I think.
Oh, there you go.
All right, David, so Weave is tightly integrated with the PMS, surfacing relevant patient data in real time. How does that transform the scheduling interaction?
Yeah, I mean, everything happens with context, right? And so if we understand the patient, if it's an existing patient, a new patient, we can then take that information and profile and their also needs, and we can help facilitate the decisioning process for a practice. The other thing that's, in order for patients to get scheduled, they've got to be able to actually call in, right? And you need to have context for who they are, their next appointment. You need to know if they have any outstanding balances. So all that context allows you to navigate a conversation in a very natural way, because you're not asking a bunch of questions, because it's just there presented to you as they come into either call in or come into the practice, which is really helpful. And again, that context gives you ability to kind of manage your schedule in a much more effective way. If you know they've got a family member that has a schedule later in the week, do you want to coordinate that together so it's more efficient and effective for them? So it creates a better experience for them and for you. And the other thing is you need to make sure that somebody's actually responding to those requests. If they call in and that call's missed, you need to have a process to be able to recapture that call and make sure it gets heard. You know what's happened. It doesn't go to voicemail and it doesn't get lost. So having things like missed call text or other components, or your TrueLark AI that actually responds to that in a dynamic way, so that you're making sure that scheduling is getting done in an efficient and effective way.
Great, thank you. So Weave is a very comprehensive system and platform. Planet DDS, you guys bring to market through Dykema, Cloud9, very comprehensive offerings. Question for Tapan. So we've heard maybe different terms around point solution versus platform. Can you shed some light on the difference between a point solution and a platform in the context of what we discussed earlier in terms of configurability, extensibility, and shed some light on your perspective between the two and why it matters?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll start with the why. DSOs, like any other business, will have limitations on what they can adopt, what they can evaluate, what they can roll out effectively, right? And so given that reality of every business having constraints, when you're designing a system, And when you're trying to, run a pilot or start some sort of rollout process, you have to keep in mind that there are limited resources that will be there to pilot, to roll out, so on and so forth. And so when you're deploying solutions, when you're developing solutions, you want to make sure that that time that you're getting from your customer, that it can be multiplied as time goes on. And so a customer may come to you to solve a specific problem, and hopefully you have a solution that allows them to address that specific problem. But ideally, what you have is a solution that can be extended over time to address the newer and newer use cases that will evolve, or problems that may arise for that practice or DSO into the future. So to me, a point solution is something that will perhaps address one problem and perhaps do it well, but a platform is something that will allow you to not only do that, but allow you to handle your next 10 things that may come up, or the next 10 things that are actually already known as being challenges within a customer site. And so that to me is what the difference is. And when we design systems within TrueLark and Weave, we keep that in mind. We keep in mind that these are folks that aren't going to be able to onboard every single thing with as much effort every single time. And so make sure that you're designing something that can be onboarded once and then perhaps easily flipped on as time goes on.
Thanks for that. So Chris, let's switch to you, because you're a technology partner at Planet DDS. How do you help DSO scale and move from chaos to clarity within the platform environment, and especially scheduling across multiple practices with different workflows? How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we approach it by having an extremely configurable system that can be deployed and unified across a full enterprise DSO. So that way you're getting the same information consistently across the board with your practices. And you're able to get that data stream how you want it, when you want it. To the point that Tapan was just making right now, and another part of that is when you're a practice management system, you can engage in scheduling, you can engage in RCM, you can engage in all these different factors that we know every dental practice needs to operate. But there are certain elements of practice operations that you can't necessarily look at the practice management system and say, can you dive into this specific element, that specific element, which is why we've also really started to expand what we're doing from an open API perspective with our dental OS to engage with teams like Weave and TrueLark, so that way you can get exactly what you want from a scheduling and communications perspective that's configured to exactly how you want your team to engage with the schedule. So one thing that Amy brought up is, her phantom columns and everything like that. You can have those in Denticon, certainly. You can add that column in there. But I will tell you, if it's a Friday afternoon and there's a double book column right there to throw into the phantom, it's not getting offered by the team. Right. But who is offering that? TrueLark.
AI.
And so that's my earlier moment when I maybe said operationally we want to go top down, and I was maybe rebuffed there. That's because I'm looking at it from that perspective of there are these elements that teams don't want to engage with because it's just human nature not to want to. So we can set up a practice management system that is engaged to grow the practice by 30%, increase that revenue. But we can also engage partners like Weave and TrueLark so that we know it's not left up to human nature, or that Saturday afternoon there's a football game someone wants to go watch. I'll be honest, I'll even throw it at myself. Maybe you want to have a Friday afternoon meeting with Chris at 4:00, but I've got a 2:00. But maybe I'd offer that first because my daughter wants me to go hang out with her and grab an ice cream. It's just human nature, and so using tools like that help us to engage our practice management system in a more effective manner that is configurable to exactly what the DSO and their leadership need to effectively engage the patient base and give the patients what they want, which is a better experience in the time that it works for them. And oftentimes those are the times that you don't want to offer as a team member within a practice, because life happens for everyone. And so yeah, we're really just engaged in getting tech partners like Weave and TrueLark to help us allow for those configurable systems that are extremely precise in these elements.
So we'll kind of continue the AI thread here. Amy, MB2 has started adopting AI voice reminders, and it's expanding use cases with AI with TrueLark. What are you learning about what AI can do, and where does it still need to improve?
AI has come a long way. Recently, I've learned that people don't even know it's AI. So I do have some practices that are doing confirmations through voice AI with TrueLark. And again, it's one of those tasks that we ask a practice to do, and they'll mark that they confirmed or they reached out to the 4 o'clock Friday patient, but they actually don't because they're hoping they don't show so that they can go home early. So it's one of those like daunting tasks that the practice has to add to their day, and they really just don't want to do it. It goes out via voice. And I recently had a practice, and the doctor's wife had a cleaning scheduled. And so voice AI called her and confirmed her appointment, and she chatted with the new young lady at the front desk at her husband's practice and had a full conversation, and called the manager and said, "Oh, when did you hire her? She was so lovely." And it was TrueLark. So there are, you don't necessarily know. It's not robotic. And it's definitely made an improvement because it's taking that task off the practice so that they can focus on the patient in front of them, right? Like landing the cases that are in front of them, the customer service in front of them. Same thing with missed calls. I do have TrueLark launched where it will handle missed calls. So nothing, again, I have a list of pet peeves and practices. Don't answer the phone and put them on hold, right? You don't even know what they need. And so if you're engaged with the patient and nobody is available to answer the phone, then TrueLark takes over that call. And most of those engagements, it's pretty high in most of my practices. And of course, I'm a storyteller because that's how people relate. But my mother called one of my practices to book her implant, and they didn't answer, and TrueLark took over, and she said, it was great. They texted me and asked me what I was needed, and she said, I need to book an appointment for my implant, and it asked me what day and time, and she's a 75-year-old woman that booked her own appointment through a text thread with TrueLark at a practice. And it's easier, like we need convenience. And so that's the other piece that plays into this, like confirmations, it needs to be convenient. We don't call patients at 10 a.m. Most patients are working. So you can also set those parameters and have it call when it's convenient for the patient to get that confirmation.
Thank
I think
you.
that sums it up.
Good. Before we open it up to audience questions, I wanted to throw a slider, maybe a curveball, just kind of going back to the baseball analogy here. I don't know if this is ever done before. I haven't done it with the panel, but I wanted to open up the panel to be able to ask questions amongst each other. So Amy, Chris, David, Tapan, do you guys have any questions or add-on questions or follow-up thoughts that you wanted to ask one of your peers sitting up here amongst you? Didn't know that was coming, did you?
No.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There we go. So David, when it comes to data and engaging with data, what are you looking at from a Weave TrueLark perspective in a practice and in a technology partner? Like what data are you looking to engage with more than anything and feed back into a practice from a reporting standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the full kind of think about patient life cycle. So like when when a new patient calls in, we need to actually check to make sure that it's actually a new patient. So we're looking at all the contact information, doing patient search, seeing if there's a fuzzy match, a direct match, trying to make sure that we actually know the context for who that patient is and how to proceed forward. Then the next thing is just everything as it relates to current scheduling and scheduling availability. So understanding all the context for, is there something already pending for that patient? What is it? When is it? And what's the availability to reschedule? Or are there openings for a new patient to come in? To your point earlier, when can we put that in? So we're reading every aspect of the PMS and having that context provided back through the communication channel to understand when and how we can proceed with that conversation. The last area is when on the payment side. So in the context of, a patient comes in, you provide them a treatment plan recommendation, you need to do, a patient pay at that time, actually being able to have that context, that information feed in. But once you've received that payment, you also need to put that back into the PMS to confirm and put that into the ledger. So, and then ultimately at the end of the day, when insurance comes back, you need to know what the remaining balance due is and be able to do follow-up on that. You can do all that through automation. If there's one call that a practice does not want to make, it's to follow up on the $5.55 that's remaining balance. And that's probably the last down on the list. But that's very necessary for practices to maintain, their effectiveness and AR balances. So yeah, as much short answer is as much data as we can get in a real-time basis, the better, the systems kind of work together. And all we're trying to do is extend the value of what you offer every day into a communication frame that kind of works for that patient, right? Because that's where we do our best job is making it really easy for both the practice and the patient to interact with that practice. And so if we can provide that accessibility and put it all back into the PMS, then that's a win for everybody.
That sounds like a win for me. So.
Any other questions amongst the four of you?
Chris, are you the person that should come to when I have API asks?
Probably. You can probably come to me and I can harass the right people.
No, I mean, ultimately, what powers a lot of these patient experiences is data. So being able to make data available from your system for other systems to consume and write back to is critical. And so that's true whether it's a PMS system, whether it's a CRM, whether it's a decision support software like Overjet and others. And so, if there's one ask I have of the industry, it's to make sure that this data is available whenever a customer, a patient or a customer needs it. So, or a DSO or a patient needs it, so that we can make their experiences as seamless as possible. Some have been at the forefront, others are following. But the good thing is that in the past 4 years or 5 years since we've been in the dental market, we've seen movement in the right direction. And so, through good partnership between companies like TrueLark, Weave, and Planet DDS, we've been able to kind of make these asks and see progress in the right direction, so that we can deliver the best experiences for our patients that's possible.
And the one thing I'll add is, the importance of understanding, again, kind of the life cycle of that patient and whether it actually translated into what you expected it to. So there's a great example that we had with a customer we're working with that had a call center. And so they propped up the call center to handle all missed calls. And the great news is they had the data that said, okay, we don't have missed calls. We've got, this 98%, acceptance rate on the call, but they didn't have the life cycle data to tell you, did it actually convert to an appointment? Right? And so what they saw is they were getting all the calls and they were receiving the calls and they had spent all this money propping up that call center, but it actually didn't change the outcomes of the practice. They were still getting the same amount of appointments and they weren't getting the efficiency on the back end. And so by actually being able to understand the downstream of, was the call received? Did it translate into an appointment? Did that patient show up? And the life cycle data is really what actually gives you context to say, am I getting the true return on that investment?
How many patients call to cancel and the staff member doesn't actually ask them to reschedule? Ask them to reschedule. That never happens, right? Never. Right, that's a piece of it.
Yeah, and my wife owns a practice that's in the med spa space, but the worst thing is then they call to cancel, but they're busy, so they actually forget to cancel it, and then she thinks she has 2 appointments that are no longer there. You want to see my wife get upset. She's the kindest person I meet, but that puts her over the edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it drives consistency and making sure all of the things that you expected to happen actually happen. But with the right tonality. And somebody has a bad day and you had a frustrating conversation, you're not going to hear that on the phone because the context for that voice or that text is going to be as positive as you want it to be for that practice. And so you take out that variability of, humans in the loop are best when dealing with the most, complex situations, right? And the most nuanced situations, of which AI is not, hasn't perfected yet. So there's 60 to 70% of these transactions or interactions that just can be taken in a way that achieves the results you always wanted to achieve. And the brand and the tone and the types of context and the information that you always wanted to have happen, but never really could do it because there's too many variables in the loop with too many practices, too many people, too much transition, turnover, et cetera, et cetera.
Excellent. Yeah, let's open it up to the floor. We've covered a lot, configurability, automation, patient experience, and what modern solutions look like. Looks like we already have a question here, so I'd love to hear some of the things that you have been, prompted to think about. And let's see.
I can speak pretty low.
Okay, well.
So one is a comment and the other one is a question. So I find that most of my clients, the ones that are thinking about adopting technology, just want it to be easy, right? As frictionless as possible. But what I'm finding is that as there's a race to become the first in this area versus the other, that there's not much consideration for what is easy. Pretty seamless, as I heard some of you mention, or seamless and those types of things. Where, especially if you're asking people to adopt something new, it has to be easy. That, like you said, press a button and they don't sometimes even know it's there. But what they care about is that it solves a problem, right? And so that's all they care about. So that's the comment. The question I have is, what role is predictive analytics being used in some of your AI systems? For example, there's a lot of data that you can extract, but it's only as good as what goes in. So, what are you doing to make sure that the data that you currently have is actually correct? And number two, what are you looking at collecting that you probably have not thought about collecting that helps inform you a bit better about what patients are likely to show up or not, and how the schedule is optimized in such a way that you mitigate against some of those no-shows or cancellations, etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. What I would say is that there's a range of different viewpoints as to how to attack this problem generally, right? You're going to have an entire spectrum within one organization, and probably multiple different viewpoints within one organization. So I think what's important is to be able to build a system that allows you to be as stringent as you'd like when doing intake, when doing scheduling, but also have the exact opposite as well, which is not have as much friction, not collect as much information up front to ensure that you're making it easy when you want to make it easy. For instance, if you want to collect, insurance information up front, build a system that allows for that, right? But be aware that that is a friction point and that will make it difficult to engage and get engagement from patients. But ultimately, it's a matter of, I think, from my perspective, designing a system that allows for that range of configurability so that you're adapting to how you'd like to operate. Admittedly, there isn't much that goes into how TrueLark handles conversations today as it relates to, predicting whether someone's going to no-show or not, or predicting, exactly when they'd like to be able to come in. Our AI does allow you to, answer questions regarding those kind of topics and then navigate you to that point, but it doesn't do it proactively. But given that, and even there, it comes down to what data access do you actually have, right? And how clean is that data? And today, I hear from DSOs all the time that, I'd like you to be able to predict based on how likely someone is to show up or not. the question is that data accessible, right? The short answer is no, right? There isn't clean data within most PMSs that even allows you to determine how often someone no-shows, or how likely they are no-show, or when was the last time you no-showed, because that data in and of itself is not clean, because it's touched by a lot of different people within an organization, and you don't know if they're following the same process every time to answer that exact question. And so I think there's opportunity to improve around, across the board. And then ultimately, where we get stuck is, do we want to even act on that data if it's not clean at all to begin with? So, yeah, something that can be improved for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you could do is to flip that question around, and within the TrueLark platform, you actually generate data or analytics that actually help run your operations better. So, I mean, different practices within the DSO may have different scheduling configurations, different settings, and you can see the performance of those practices, everything else being the same level of marketing dollars, et cetera, you're seeing different rates of production coming out of it. And we do this a lot when it comes to, especially when DSOs are in a POC, we generate a matrix that allows you to see through our analytics, what are best practices that may help improve the performance or the setup, the scheduling setup at a location, right? So that is available, but like Tapan said, it's very hard to wrangle with the variabilities in the data. When do you say an appointment is truly, that you can bank it in the ROI? I mean, is it when it's booked? Is it when they show? Is it when they pay? I mean, there's just such a range, and it's very hard for systems currently, given the fact that they don't necessarily talk to each other, for us to get that full view, no matter how hard we try.
Yeah, and that's something at Planet DDS we are actually looking at, is how can you analyze that? That's something that we're looking at into the future, because I do think that practice management systems have a ton of data, but it's inert, and it just sits there, and it's up to human analysis to figure that out, or a data analyst to look into that. That's something that we're engaged in, and I think once we figure out how to effectively present it, it's something I'd love to engage our partners with. But I think the biggest thing also is when you get that data, there's always going to be slippage. There's going to be a gap. So let's say you can accurately predict your cancellation no-show patients by 80%. Well, as soon as that 20%, that you've overbooked them, but then they actually showed up, but the predictive model said they weren't going to show up, all of a sudden you are going to walk into a storm with that office, because they're looking at that percentage, and it could be lower, it could be 5% even, but as soon as there's that one patient that walks in at the same time as another patient, they're like, well, the predictive model said this. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, give that one patient who you knew was a no-show risk a Starbucks gift card, $25, 100% worth it, send them on their way, and then squeeze them into the next available slot. But those moments really make, and I think that's why you don't see these predictive models, is there's a risk in presenting it, because we want it to be easy, we want it to be frictionless, but inherently in some of those methodologies, you're going to present some type of friction in just trying to engage with that information.
I don't think it's avoidable, right? It's the only way through is through.
Yep.
So it requires us to be willing to go that distance to be able to improve the system and to develop one that actually works for everyone. And I like the idea of the configurability, that what works for group A doesn't necessarily work for group B, and they can turn on and toggle on and off whatever it is that works for them, and which kind of works with the MB2 model in a way, right? So I think that is probably the most attractive part of what I have heard you talk about, is that whole idea of
think we have time maybe for one more question before people need to start getting to their other events. Okay, got one there? Yep.
Yeah, how are you seeing a trend of help happening after office hours or before office hours? Because that's when patients want to engage. And are you tracking that, and what is your experience there?
Yeah, so after hours is huge, right? And again, we talked about the confirmations. Maybe it's best that those confirmation calls go out from 6 to 7 or 5:30 to 6:30. And that way you get more of that engagement and confirmation in those schedules, right? But people get home, it's the end of the night, and that is where I believe the biggest part of this whole interaction comes from, is the patient's calling the practice, or the practice doesn't work Fridays, or they close at noon. You will have that, right? They don't want to work Fridays, 4-day work week, like we have a 4-day work week. And so you have a solution because it's handling that opportunity and it's booking that patient at a convenient time for them. Look, I'm a working mom. I need convenience as well. And so I'm looking for convenience when I call a practice, medical doctor. And the other thing is that nobody hates being put on hold or just ring, right? It's like 7 rings till a voicemail picks up. And then you gotta hear everything and press 1 to do this. Like it's just too complicated. And so when the practice doesn't pick up the phone, TrueLark automatically kicks in, and you can set that for whatever ringtones you want at each individual practice. And it literally, we're sending you a text right now to handle your appointment. And so some of my practices have booking engagements as high as 89%. The lowest practice is probably 68% engagement. The engagement is actually incredible, and it changes what's needed to make that happen. Hence why I created phantom columns, because you also have to be able to get the patients in at their convenient time. So yes, the engagement after hours is huge, especially the Fridays.
There's nothing more frustrating than to see, like, you can book online, and you go to book online, and you're basically just filling out a form.
You'll get a
and
form.
they're gonna call you back. Like, there's nothing more frustrating.
Right, and they're not calling you back till Monday at 4, and you have a toothache, and by then you probably have gone somewhere else. So yeah, you don't want a form, you actually want a solution. As a patient, you want an outcome. You're calling, you need something. If you're calling practice, you need something.
Check it off my list.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And from
Be done with this thing.
And from a
Yes.
practice perspective, coming in on a Monday morning and getting a backlog of voicemails they have to go through, and while they're trying to get set up for the week and check in patients, it's really hard. And so taking a better experience for the patient itself, more timely, more active, more real time, with the right tonality and the right information, and then the practice gets into a smooth Monday with, instead of 40 appointments that they need to deal with 2 or 3 that just were complex, that were left over. So.
How close are you to, I guess it's connected, you have a cancellation, your schedule is open, how close are you to getting AI to look at your reporting and see who's pending for treatment, for outbound calls to try to get people to fill those schedules?
And I think that's pretty close. I can't give a time frame on it, but with how fast things are going, I mean, you're just looking at probably months. I'm not going to say how many of those months, but months. But I mean, we really need to get there as an industry anyways. I mean, what you were talking about right now, and we're talking about after hours. After hours, I think, is the easy one to talk about this. What about lunch hours? How many offices are you just running into voicemails at 12 o'clock? But that's the only time, like, I'm not calling anyone other than one of my customers or one of the offices that I work with, until I finally get 20 minutes to sit down and try to jam some food in my face. I'm like, oh yeah, my wife did tell me I've got to give my daughter a pediatric appointment. So glad that they also take lunch at this time. That's really unfortunate. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe we should start taking her to our general dentist, because I'm sick of this. But yeah, I mean, we really do need to start engaging with patients at their level, but we also need to understand patients more So that way we aren't just engaging with the patients to give them what they want, but we're engaging with the practices to understand what their patient's behavior is and start to model engagement based on that. So it's certainly something that we're looking at, and I know it's on roadmap slides that I've seen, but I don't have exact months. Come over to our head of product is over at our booth, and so I can put you in front of a guy that is, like Tapan said, do you know who to harass? And that's basically my job, is I'm a bull in the china shop, and everyone at Planet DDS kind of hates me.
I don't think that's true.
No, I'm
Chris.
kidding.
I don't
I'm
think that's
kidding.
true.
But that's what I used to say about Tapan too. Is I was like, I'm pretty sure Tapan hates me with these Excel sheets that I'm sending him like every other day.
Very good. Any last comments there? I think we're at time. What I will say, I have one announcement before we wrap, and then a couple more comments. If you enjoyed this, we are hosting another session later today at 1:30 to 2:30. It's an ice cream social, and that is going to be brought by Overjet and TrueLark. So we will have the founder and CEO of TrueLark, Shrivatsan Laxman, having a conversation with Warda Inam about many things related to AI and the interaction between systems like TrueLark and Overjet. Should be exciting, and it includes ice cream, so what's there to lose? We will have a few of us around after the session, so if you would like to talk to any of us, feel free to do so. But before we adjourn, I just want to thank everybody for coming and your participation and your questions. Thank you, thank you. And then I'd like to thank our panel for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. And with that, have an excellent day.